In communication, connectivity is everything. We ensure that the links never sleep. Quantities and qualities, all in our data service, providing efficient, reliable voice and data service. We believe if you're not up to speed, then you're going backwards. Communications have to flow as fast as the speed of light. Whatever business you're in, having someone who understands your needs is critical. That is why we just don't offer you technology, we offer you solutions. Enjoy Gamcel's internet broadband anytime, anywhere. Your national operator, Gamcel, Yaibaram.
Musa?
Na?
Ano ba na talaga naman so?
Ay, ka naman so?
De paso.
Ayo. Do ni mudo.
Musa ba rin yung ato sila de?
Kema fulani sila munen.
Tulo banta le mano banda.
Bari man sene so funde ni mano bande sa fonje.
Kilo le bota.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam bam.
Bare.
Wa ko do ki yana ne yuna ya mo.
Min to yona. Mansara. Itu nata. Yaja.
Yelo nada.
Ngamano sammanang ngatulo samman. Bismillah.
Na?
Na nyumanu dia atal ko.
Yalo ni mano wara demen. Jona biro ngayin tawlet. Ngata ko do kama demen. Man façon fula wala beje. Kilo talul tabeje, kilo monni lul tabeje. Hani duuli no beje. Ni tale ko do kama. Ni lefta ko do les ko do ta inaita. Na dia te fene si mano le sanjalin tulon ni hani nyin fongonya alkame to wabul kame fokan diringle ni lemnato. Ngabo ndeje.
Yuna la kanyunu be sama.
Itu la kanyunu be sama. Yaje.
ñoo ak yeen rek skincare plus nara jàkkaarloo ak yeen waxtaan ak yeen tuuti rek ci suñu tube suñu baax emuñ rek ci ay diw waaye comme ni ngeen ko xamee rek dañoo yëngu ci ay tube te yënguwuñ nag ci just any tube suñ tube bu nekk 5 star jesna la 5 star jesna mooy jesna bi gën a pire moom la ñoo tube palmaan bi gën a fort moom la ñoo liggéeyee ñun rek ci tube dara du doy day des not only dañoo tube but bu la neexee ñu tuubal la ba pare nag ñawal la. We're not all about skin. We are skin, care, and the plus does come in so many different ways.
No, ini bara.
Alright, okay.
Welcome. Basically, lot of lala me along is cool, man. That I can really relax.
What the madam?
Yeah, that's
What the madam?
Yeah.
Let them do somebody.
That's fine.
Grand villa.
That's fine.
Slowly. Yes. No.
Yeah, actually, lot of people are basically me along can very relaxed. So it's basically that I can understand. It's very relaxed.
Nina Fani say what? Nidia, Nena Grand Villa is the best guest house in the Gambia.
Beji andikam Grand Villa Guesthouse. Na labungol bebe senyaring adum na bungol bebe nyarandiring coming ibela fila ila suwe taranyame. Until Grand Villa na kiliano la lafino wale mukangwati intel kang. Na ye sabati Grand Villa yela kodo na fa kalamuta.
Oh man, this is like a paradise.
I know.
I so much love this place.
Yes, thank you.
Trust me, I love this place.
You can move someone and you're watching what?
Yeah.
Happening down and you want to Gambia. Grand Villa.
I tell you. I love this place. Okay. I love this place, man. Oh yeah.
Ni leftan na kuo keso sotola. Futama Oljuntum Paradise Estate. Mbaya kumandiroke 7527-218. Wale futana website auto www.grandvillaguesthouse.com. Grand Villa Guesthouse.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
yaran yilla domoro ka diaten
boy jannon sikes restaurant
e say nakko be ninna dimbal nimbe domoro kala janno
domoro seneyata adiyata topotoro fanan kendema bije luntan during tamala abeka domoro ki janni adi manda wala de te ka we bijele anim fanan ka fadi jang ikono e fa e ka fa minne ko pastry anim bakery iko fanan be kalele badde lomba conference lomba workshop lomba ye fo fendin lon dunia kono domoro betama ñillom international o to number 1
amanke ba do mo la jang damma
esa do mo jang is atariya
wo mu kubandi
sa na ko sa futandi
oto sa na ko be mu CK's restaurant
ndafa na janna mu yat ni manje do mbijam
aban
CK's restaurant, known for best quality food and customer satisfaction.
na broda min ba Europe Mr. Conte nka bo wala kol kan sai na so kono mano ban ta jabo ban ta tulo ban sai ka bo wala kol kan da ka ba official kono ba dama bulo mutarin ba ka ta simpla no ko ba to ngane ta ya kuriyen ma ko do ban na ta mano sa ni tulo ni jam mun da bete ni la broda man balwo service kala mun service balwo service ni da foron te mo kala mun da a fe la broda ko abitala internet all aya ba site la woldo balwo.com na wo sajje a apu nga ba download la telephone lo na be sandiro to ni wal na be sirin ala office ko ndama manjar pura ta bank ko kodoki abe sirin office ko da minto e do message so telephone ko no e biti ko be Gambia dawda biti ko ba belo ko ta tano dawda yeta fenko tawo woda ma yala bari wa service na ta mo da na ta nyo le kan fi janna bro dan ta ko ta nyo ayo ko ti ta
balwo service dinkirala jampo o manken na kolaya ko balwo service al demano kaje ko ale do mor feŋol sang alla dimbaya molu ana lakkanun tewol wato bela ani wat sudum fanan kono balwo service la dinkiralu ani la do kunyolu e be banko karo beto kabirin katon fo koyna nalla fa ko ku ko tan soro balwo service la kolto ali commandi telephone la no la milbuko 9400213 7694319 wala 3192870 wala hankabi alta internet oto alila kulu jibe www.baluwo.com.
Do you live abroad and want to build your dream home in the Gambia without risking your funds and family ties? Do you want a household name that is trustworthy and efficient? A name that will continue to give you updates on the project from the beginning to the very end with videos and pictures? If your answer is yes, then worry no more. Boss Construction and Asset Management is here for you. If you live outside the Gambia and want to build your dream home, then this is ideal for you. Just reach out to Boss Construction and let's start building the dream home into a reality. With Boss Construction, the difference is clear. We give you value for money. Some of our services includes the following: construction management, building equipment rentals, rent management, purchase and leasing, asset management, and many more. For more information, please contact 282-4945. Better still, send us an email, bossgambia@gmail.com, or you can also visit our website on www.bossgambia.com. Boss Construction, a name you can trust. Boss Construction and Asset Management, keeping families together.
Yeah, welcome to the brunch on Kerr, Fatou, wherever you are watching us from. This week, I'm Lamin and together with my colleague, Nima Kamara, from the Gambia College, and very much part of Kerr, Fatou now. When we came your way last week, we were at the Kairaba Avenue when there was a demonstration by the Center for Victims of Human Rights Abuse, who staged a demonstration to counter, well, they said they didn't counter, but to counter that of the APRC, who were asking for the return of ex-President Jammeh. We are now back in the studio, and this week we will touch that topic, as well as the burning of the 3 years Jatna, the demonstration, and the burning, as well as the landmark ruling in the case of Honorable Yakumba Jaite, who has regained her seat as nominated member of Parliament after the Supreme Court decided that the revocation of her nomination by the President was unconstitutional. You may welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the hottest piece of news, of course, was the demonstration that was planned and staged by the 3 years, and that really turned violent. Until now, we are hearing we've heard that the organization has been banned, and its top executive members have been dragged to court and charged with, among other things, vandalism, which is a very serious case in the eyes of the law. But let me take you back. What is your reflection on that day? I'm not asking you to say who is to blame, but how do you follow the whole, protest or class leading on to where we are now?
Lamin, thank you very much. We have had the 3S Jotna members on this platform for so many times, and every time we have them here, what they preach is peace. Their only objective is to go out to hold to account the president and what he has promised the Gambian people, to honor that promise. So it was surprising for me, and it was surprising for a lot of Gambians the way things turn out. And we have also witnessed many events taking place prior to that. For example, when the EU country representative issued a statement, that was a shocker for all of us. The ECOWAS came to do the same thing. They were all following a narrative, the narrative by the government to subject or to portray the 3S Jotna group as a rebel group, or as people who are determined to overthrow a government illegally. And I think that's a misleading information from the onset. Protests, demonstrations are a healthy part of any democratic regime. When people voted President Barrow into office in 2016, they expected that there is going to be dissent. Not everybody is going to agree with you on certain all of the things that the government does. So it's a healthy part of the process, and especially when 3S Jotna first came out and they pulled out that big crowd, and it went out smoothly. It was so peaceful. Everybody praised their conduct. In fact, certain people gave credit to the government even when they didn't deserve such a credit. So to have things turn out this way, it raised suspicions. Could it have been something that they were planning from the onset? Did they want to prove a point that these people are in fact violent, and therefore we're going to go ahead and ban them as they did?
Okay, I'll give you my take on the thing, but let me bring you the viewpoint of the Gambia government. They said the rhetorics in these people's mouth is really scary and is insightful, like the thing about we are going to go and remove the government. And they claimed that while the demonstration was going on, members of the association or the organization who are based abroad were actually inciting people, and even the police, to go and join the demonstration. They said this is insightful. And of course they said they also violated the conditions of the permit. That was the side of the government, and the organization therefore is considered this is subversive for things like that. So it's considered banned. Okay. What do you make of that? Is that too harsh, or do you think the 3S Jotna got what they deserve?
I wouldn't say anybody got what they deserve. To have certain people make certain pronouncements, especially on social media, that is not within anybody's control. There are people, myself included, who supported this move or this course, although we were not going to go out there because we may not necessarily agree on the course of action to take. But majority of the Gambians believe that Barrow has betrayed the Gambian government when he reneged on his promise. Yet there are other people who may agree with this point, but they are not going to go out to join the 3S Jotna movement. Okay. Therefore, if you have such people making pronouncement out of, on social media or whatever platform is available to them, you cannot attribute that to the actual people who are on the ground. Their conduct is what matters. So if they go out peacefully, you have to allow them to conduct their protest peacefully. But like I said,
but they said they violated. There was a problem where they were supposed to start.
There was a narrative laid down by the government already. To portray these people as the rebels, as criminals, as troublemakers. They have been singing this for so many times, and every time these people come out, their conduct and their activities would always be in deviation from what the narrative has been. Okay. So I think, for me, I think what happened was just to prove a point.
Yeah. And my take about this, I think the 3S Jotna, really, if you want to see it, I think they actually, the government's reaction played into the hands of what the 3S Jotna actually wanted. They have said it on this program and many other forums that their objective is to discredit the president and the government And the way they're going to do that is to create noise or actions that will draw people's attention to the Gambia, and people will ask, what is the problem? Yeah. And then they will say, well, here is the president on a video at the assumption of his power said he's going after 3 years. Here is him now saying, I am going now for 5 years. And the 3 years Jotna people wanted the international community and everybody who cares about Gambia to listen to that. And the way to do that is to cause action, whether by rhetoric or protest, to discredit the president. And if you look at what has happened, I mean, the headlines that went around the world, the images all that went all around the world that got people to say, wow, what's happening in the Gambia? And people just say, well, the president said he's not going to go down. People outside don't know or don't want to know what was the coalition about, or who spoiled the coalition, or what Senator Darbo had said, or what Halifa Saleh should have done or didn't do. People don't know that. All what they will see, why are we seeing these images from Gambia? And people will say, well, the president had promised to come down. He hasn't come down. So by coming to create a confrontation with them, you are playing into their hands. This is exactly what they want. What they want is for the international community and everybody to come and say, well, here is somebody who promised to go down and he hasn't gone down, and we are protesting for him to keep his promise, which is acceptable everywhere. Mm-hmm. So they won the moral in that aspects. Mm-hmm. And also, my view is that I think the government overreacted. And from the beginning, I had always said they allowed this small divergence of views to grow into a monster. If from the very beginning these talks are starting, I mean, the president or the people around him, the advisors, could come and talk to these people from the very beginning. Then this movement wouldn't have gone to be a monster, and we wouldn't have what we have. For me, I think the government loses a lot of credibility over these last few days, because the thing is, like I told you, people outside don't care that you have condemnations from all freedom organizations, human rights bodies, everywhere in the world. They are asking the government, hope you are not forgetting your obligations and commitments to respect human rights. There were videos where police were beating women, all those images that remind people of the past have all been on social media and have been seen and watched by people who care about human rights. So the last week had really been very bad image in terms of image and standing for the government. Yeah. And this is what the 3 years Jotnak actually wanted. They wanted to draw people's attention, to the fact that the president had promised and is now reneging on that promise. So this is what they wanted. I think the government, by using a confrontation, had actually played into their hands. That's what they wanted.
Well, that is true. That is very true. But we have to also understand what the government wants. 3 years might have wanted something else, but what does the government want? I am going to say this as a matter of fact, that what happened was premeditated. To lock down media houses, to arrest journalists.
We will come to that, yes.
To put a crackdown on the 3 years Jotna. All of these things were premeditated, and it was done to gain a political point. When 3 years Jotna first came out, we have seen that other protests have followed up. So it inspired other people to also launch their own protests on other issues that are unrelated. What the government believed was that this is going to be a distraction for our long-term ambition, our long-term political ambition. It is now the time that we crush this movement once and for all, so that people will be scared. It was the Jambe tactic they used. We're going to make arrests. We're going to, charge them with bogus charges. We're going to throw them in jail. It is going to scare them. And moving forward, we're not going to have any more distraction. So this may be working for them, because the ordinary Gambian, although things have changed since 2016 up to now. Many people are not listening to threats coming from the government. They have abused their power, but they did so in order to send a message that this is what awaits anybody who wants to challenge us moving forward. But I agree with you, what you have said, because we've seen that they also went on a damage control, and the damage control was not to reassure Gambian people, but to reassure the international community.
Public.
And that is, in fact, what is problematic with this government.
I read condemnations from human rights, Amnesty International, everybody.
Exactly.
Even the human rights and civil society organizations in the Gambia have all added to criticism of the way the government handled the matter. And this, I said, is where the Krias Jotna people want to push them.
Exactly.
And they have, by their reactions, played into their hands. But you mentioned a little bit about the press. The press also came under attack, according to press organizations. Now, look at this. King FM, although these people have been charged with, with incitement, and we cannot go into the substance of the case, but you look at the issue, the government made a proclamation that we journalists should not even talk about 3 years gender. And I think before an organization is outlawed in such a manner, it has to go to due process.
Obviously, that should be a law.
What do you make of that? That's a proclamation that we shouldn't even talk about, or do anything that will enhance their thoughts. Which the Gambia Press Unions, which the Gambia Press Union denounced, saying that, well, this actually means that you are stifling divergent views.
Exactly.
And there has to be a process, due process, before anybody can completely stop talking about 3 years. Well, what do you make about it?
I think that was a misguided pronouncement, and I don't think the media should play into that, because
the Gambia president has said that that proclamation is unlawful, and
the media, commentators like myself, anybody who is involved in ensuring that our democratic process moves forward, our democratic values are cemented, we shouldn't play into this, because we all have a role to play. Exactly. If we censure ourselves because somebody make a pronouncement against something that they do not like, and we censor ourselves based on that, then we're helping them to achieve their goal.
Well, the GPU said let them show us or cited laws under which we cannot talk about this organization or why we shouldn't do any business with them. And according to the GPU, they have not come any law. So the pronouncement is itself unlawful.
It's unlawful, it's illegal, it's against our democratic values. In fact, I think the spokesperson should apologize to the Gambian people based on what he said.
Well, he said he is talking on behalf of the government and the security, and they have observed through the actions and pronouncements of the 3 years judgment that they are a movement that are not really ready to abide by the law, that they are calling for overthrow of the government. They said they will burn Mr. X's house. They will. So because of all this, he said the government and the security felt that perhaps the best way is to ban them.
Yeah. But first of all, look at what is happening here. You have a government who is elected into office by these people, plus some other people who are not part of them. And these people have come out to say, we do not agree with you on 1 or 2 things that you are doing or that you have done in the past. And now they are saying, we don't want you to address your opposition to us, therefore we are going to ban you. Does that even make sense? Wow. To say that you do not agree with us, we do not accept that you do not agree with us, and we're not going to accept the fact that you're going to come here to tell us you do not agree with us, therefore we're going to ban you. What the government is doing effectively is to say that we don't want any opposition
against us. They have violated the conditions of the permit.
What does that mean?
Yeah, by refusing to start where they have been asked to start, that is the Y Johnson instead of Sting Corner.
But that does not
and some wanted to go to Banjul. Their leader was saying, let's go to Banjul and remove Madam Barrow. They said this is inciting.
Whatever those conditions are cannot prevail over the Constitution. And it is the Constitution that guarantees people's right for freedom of expression. 3 years Jotna is just a collection of citizens. It's not some business entity or whatever group that has to be legally registered to exist. These are just people, citizens that form themselves into a group, and the Constitution have empowered them to do so. So who is anybody to come out and say you are banned?
The Gambia Bar Association, who's supposed to know the law better than you and I, all said, I mean, you don't ban an organization. You don't need to be registered as an organization to ban. So they all said, I mean, the government's proclamations are really are not consistent with the laws that they themselves say they are using to ban this thing. Okay, now the matter has reached a point where we understand 137 initially, but in fact, actually, at the very beginning, I think they grabbed along 7 completely innocent people, and after they realized that those were not part of it, they were just passers-by, they released them.
They made other arrests afterwards as well.
Okay, so, but then let's say over 100 of them have now been released, whether, we don't know under what conditions, but then top executive members have been charged, like I say, vandalism, law assembly, whatever, unlawful assembly, etc., etc. Those matters are in court. We can't talk about it. Now, we move on to review another big case, that is the Supreme Court decision on Yakumba Jaite. Honorable Yakumba Jaite, had her nomination revoked by President Barrow, allegedly because she either, well, Barrow's supporters said she insulted the president. She denied that. But apparently what was clear is that she criticized, if you want to put it mildly, the president, and was not happy about him at a rally. And after that, we had an announcement that the president had revoked the nomination.
Yeah.
And then we also followed the dismissal of an injunction she really put before the courts to stop the swearing of her successor. Now, at the time, of course, many people thought that was the end of it. I mean, the case is thrown. But we were told at the time, even at the time, that the substantive matter of the case is yet to be heard. It has now been heard, and the Supreme Court said President Barrow's action was unconstitutional, and that Jaita should consider herself as MP, and her successor, Gassama, Fode Gassama, should not conduct himself as an MP anywhere. How was your reaction to this? Did you expect this? Or, like many laymen, you thought it was done and dusted when her application for injunction was rejected?
I may not have expected it, but I was looking forward to it. In fact, I was really happy when Yakumba comported herself and took this matter to the Supreme Court. I've said from that moment that this is a defining moment for our democracy. This is where we are going to know whether our judiciary is independent, but also this is where it is going to be clear to us what the implications are for the government to be for the president to be given the powers to nominate somebody in an co-equal branch of government, and to have the power to remove them, because it wouldn't make sense. If you go by the doctrine of separation of powers, it wouldn't make sense to have the president have the power to put somebody into parliament and then remove them when he doesn't agree with their conduct. So the Supreme Court, to make these decisions, really solidifies that doctrine, and it gives hope that we can hope for an independent judiciary.
Okay.
And an independent judiciary as a strong institution is very important for our regime.
Yakumba's party, the United Democratic Party, were celebrating. They said this is not just their own victory, but victory for Democrats. But President Jammeh's supporters said, well,
Barrow, you mean?
Barrow, yeah, I'm talking about Jammeh. President Barrow's supporters said, well, this is a clear manifestation that President Barrow is very much committed to democracy and the rule of law, because here was a case he was interested. He'd already made a replacement. He did not want Yakumba anywhere near the parliament, but now he's been forced to accept, he's been told that his action was unconstitutional.
When I hear
it wouldn't have happened under
like
Jammeh
that,
anyway, and the same constitution was guiding Jammeh.
When I hear
so
statements
the devil,
like that,
if the devil should have his due, perhaps you commend Mr. Barrow for allowing the independence of the judiciary, at least.
when I hear statements like that, it really makes me sad.
Why?
It makes me sad because it feels like the people are not really part of the process yet. We are in a transitional process from a dictatorial regime to a democratic regime. But the people, those who believe that the president can accept the Supreme Court's decision or refuse to accept because it's his prerogative, means that those people are not yet part of the democratic process that is unfolding yet. Because in any democratic regime, the government, the president, and everyone who is elected into office is subjected to the Constitution. And if the Constitution is interpreted that way by the people who have the power to interpret the Constitution, the president cannot, in a democratic regime, cannot refuse to accept such a ruling. If he does so, then the regime ceases to be a democratic regime. So it is not the president. It's not the president's prerogative.
But he can interfere with the process by calling the judges on the behind the scenes.
If he does,
Jammeh would threaten them and even send magistrates and judges to prison.
That's my point. If he does that, then it doesn't make sense to call this a democratic regime anymore. So you cannot attribute any gain, any democratic gain, to the president.
Yeah.
Because going against such a decision would just mean that democracy doesn't exist.
So we shouldn't even, he doesn't deserve to be praised. He just followed what should have been done.
Obviously, yeah. It's just the right thing to do.
All right. At this point, we say thank you very much to our new partners, Bel Agua, the water company all over town. They are the best, I'm told. Well, I've tasted myself, and I can vouch that they are one of the best, if not the best, water company in town. They are new partners. We thank them. At this point now, we will delve more in this matter, the Yakumba one particularly, because we are joined by two prominent legal luminaries, Lamin Darbo and Abdoulie Fatou. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's start with Lamin J. Darbo. What were at stake when Yakumba went to court to ask the Supreme Court to declare her revocation unconstitutional? What and what went into play until we reach here?
Well, really, when the matter with the courts, the very image of the judiciary is at stake. What decision would the judiciary make? The Supreme Court in particular. And so we can now that we know what the decision is, we can say at least the judiciary, the courts, the Supreme Court, that is, the judiciary is vindicated. The Supreme Court decision was very emphatic, and so there is no room for doubt about whether Yakumba should go back or shouldn't go back. Effectively, what the court said is she never ceased being a National Assembly member. So that was...
And by implication, as the court said, she should get back all monies that's due to her over the last 9 months or 11 months that she's been out of Parliament.
10 months.
10 months.
10 months really when it was before the court, but it's more than that because her nomination was revoked on the 25th of February.
Okay.
So it's about
almost a year.
It's about a whole year, yes.
So what will happen?
That's the implication.
What will happen before the Gesama? What's the interpretation of this meaning?
No.
Apart from the fact that he will stop being MP.
Well, again, the court is very emphatic. He shouldn't parade himself anymore as a member of the National Assembly. His membership of the National Assembly has been declared null and void and of no effect. So the government can, I don't know, they wouldn't go after him for the wages
he
received, but...
it wasn't not his fault.
Yeah, it wasn't his fault at all, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but obviously it's a decision worthy of celebration. We have seen decisions like this in other jurisdictions. And yes, this equals really some of the key defining moments in the jurisprudence of other countries, especially the main country in this kind of stuff is the United States. So yes, I congratulate and celebrate the Supreme Court.
Okay. And are there any other lessons you can learn? Because this is as well as a precedent in our judicial system where, or has it happened in the past where the court has to go against what the president wanted?
Well, the court didn't go against what the president wanted. The president did what he was not supposed to do in the first place.
Okay.
You know, this was something he shouldn't have done.
Okay.
The court was just interpreting the law as it understands it, and that happens to be the correct position.
Okay.
As far there are two issues there, that is the refusal of the injunction and the decision on the substantive matter. On the substantive matter, the court is completely correct. On the injunction, I think there is room for law reform.
Okay, the UDP, the party where he comes from, she comes from, they made a political point, maybe it could also be a legal point, that if it had been handled properly at the time of the injunction, maybe we wouldn't have come to this embarrassing situation for the executive. Do you think there was anything wrong with rejecting the court's decision to reject the injunction in the first place in February last year?
Yes.
What was wrong?
Well, what was wrong was, if you look at the grounds on which the court should have granted the injunction, that Yakumba had a legal right, obviously, because he was already a member of the National Assembly. He had a legal right that needed to be protected. But the balance of convenience, you know, you ejected her from the National Assembly without due process of law. In fact, the president could not have done it, so there would have been no process at all.
Okay.
That process should not have been activated. Yes, because this is not a right that he had. Probably he got legal advice, probably he ignored legal advice. But whatever happened, if you look at the grounds on which injunctions are granted, you can say that the Supreme Court got that wrong. But I read the decision of the Supreme Court, and it said this was a special circumstance in the sense that statutory bodies should be able to go ahead and do their job. And if membership of the National Assembly was left in abeyance, it's not fully constituted, then that probably was not good. But what happened was, since Yakumba went to court, up to the time the decision was made, it was over 10 months. Over 10 months. Yes, that shouldn't be.
Okay.
If the Supreme Court believes that government action should be presumed regular,
yes.
then it needed to decide this within a month, because there were no factual issues. It was a matter of interpretation, constitutional interpretation.
Wasn't that also a case of lack of manpower in Supreme Court, like it happened at the time of Jammeh when they said they didn't have a quorum or they didn't have many judges?
Oh, no. In this particular case, there was no issue like that.
There was no issue like that.
Yeah, because when the injunction was decided, the Supreme Court was properly constituted. Yeah, 5 members. So that was the...
so you mean it shouldn't have taken this long?
No, it shouldn't. If you are going to refuse an injunction, then it shouldn't take more than 6 weeks to decide the case. There are no factual issues. The Supreme Court said so in the case, that there were no factual issues they needed to sift through. The facts were very clear. The president removed Yakumba. Yakumba went to court. All the court needed to do is look at the legal provisions that the legal teams, the plaintiff team led by, at that stage, the applicant team led by Boriture, Yasin Semor, Bensuda, Job and others. And of course, the government team led by the Attorney General and the Director of Civil Litigation, Bingadi, and their team. So obviously, they could have consolidated this matter and decided within 6 weeks. 6 weeks for me would even be too much. A month probably. Yes, certainly. So if you are going to remove somebody's right, you need to do this as fast as possible.
Abdoulie, what do you make of this case? I mentioned it's a precedent. Well, just simply because of the fact that maybe what we had before, 22 years ago, it was unthinkable for anything like that. In any case, the president had interest. We know Mr. Barrow had interest in this, but he had not interfered with the process. Like he said, he once said he would never call any judge or any magistrate from State House over any case. Jammeh used to do this. Well, people always say, let's not compare Jammeh with what we have now. But what do you make of it? It's a precedent. A precedent has been set in our judicial system. Now, this will deter the president or any other president to interfere with the legislature or any other area that's not within his powers.
I did not expect the decision made by the Supreme Court.
Why? Because you think there was a lot of political interest.
We made these arguments at the time, and Mr. Darbo and I wrote at the time to argue that the attempted, and I remember an article, a lengthy one I wrote, I actually captioned this as the attempted removal, because I believed that the removal itself was incomplete, was unlawful, and therefore I did not even say the president's removal.
You said
so I argued that the attempted removal, because I believed that the president was simply attempting to do something that he didn't ordinarily have powers to execute. And then I think we've been vindicated by the Supreme Court. But incidentally, I was in Yakumba's office a week before the judgment. We spent an hour together, and we discussed the issue. And genuinely, I told Yakumba I think that the ship had sailed. But the fact that the Supreme Court refused to grant her application for an injunction. And the fact that Mr. Gassam had already been sworn in as an MP, that it was going to be muddy for the same court to actually unwind a mess that perhaps was created. So for the purposes of convenience, that the status quo was going to remain. But again, I have to say that I am a strong critic of the Supreme Court, not the Supreme Court in general, but Supreme Court from Jammeh's time, because I think that the sort of, and Mr. Darbo and I have always had lengthy conversations about this issue. We always believe that especially countries like Gambia, where there is a strong tendency for executive excesses and overreach, that the only way that you can curb and limit the abuse of executive power is to have very strong judicial systems, to have very strong courts in the exercise of their powers, in interpreting and enforcing the law, to ensure that the executive is always accountable and executive actions are always within the boundaries of the law. If you look at the last 20 years or so, I do not think that if you look at judgments delivered by the Supreme Court, by and large, I think they've always been in favor of the executive, even where you believe there are compelling reasons for the courts to have ruled against. So in as much as I believe that the attempted removal of Yakumba by the president was unlawful and unconstitutional, I did not believe, and I'm not going to hesitate to say that I didn't believe that we had a court, a Supreme Court, with enough bite and teeth to stand up and tell the executive that it disagreed with the position, that the decision taken by the executive. So the decision itself was even more profoundly satisfying, because we can now say that perhaps it is a hint of this being a watershed moment in our jurisprudence and in the way matters like this are adjudicated. But again, I don't want to flatter myself. I think I will try and limit the kind of enthusiasm I have, because if you look at the decisions of the Supreme Court, if you look at decisions of the Court of Appeal, if you look at the decisions of the High Court, especially where they relate to challenges in respect of administrative and executive decision making, more often than not, it is the case that it appears that our courts are reluctant, more often than not, to actually interfere with executive decision making. Well, I am not so too many cases have been brought to court over the last couple of 3 years to probably speculate more accurately on that issue. So therefore, I am pleased, I am genuinely happy that this is the outcome that's come about. But I hope this is not a one-off. And that's my concern. And when I spoke to Mr. Darbo shortly after, and I said to him, I am still slightly in denial, and unless I see the entire judgment, to see the reasons put forward by the court, I hope this is not going to be academic, where the courts are saying that the president hasn't got the power, but there is something there that means that remedies sought by Yakumba would not be would be meaningless. But it appears, I just had a brief look at it, that that is not the case. But I hope that for all our courts going forward, that the spirit that manifested in this case is embraced, and it becomes customary as opposed to because that's supposed to be the norm. Exactly. Traditionally, that wasn't the norm. The norm was that you have to, you've got your back against the wall, and for the courts to find in your favor, in this kind of not complicated, in this kind of volatile, more politically sensitive matters. So I hope this sets the right precedent, and I hope going forward that this becomes the norm rather than the exception.
Okay. What I learned from the two, as they themselves would say, London friends, is that they actually thought that we shouldn't even have arrived at this place, and the court should have. Abdoulie said, Mr. Darbo said it took too long. It could have been 6 weeks or something before they could decide. Abdoulie said he had always believed that, in fact, the president was attempting to do it, because he didn't call it removal, attempted removal, which means they thought they saw that it was wrong from the first place up to now, because of all the interpretations. But would you agree that we have come to a point, even though he said it's too early to be really over enthusiastic about the thing, but we have come to a point where this judiciary is certainly not going to be like what we had on the Gambia. Although even we don't have high-profile cases, when we have the 3 years judgment coming anyway, we have to look at that to see. But Killer Aids and so, yes, he was convicted and stopped. Highly profile, politically politicized cases. Okay.
I don't know. I think there is also optimism, yet we must remain vigilant.
Okay.
I think that's what I suspected from what they said.
I don't know. I want to come with another judgment. I don't know how familiar we are with that. The same court ruled almost at the same time or the same day that Darbo is when the Supreme Court said they agreed with the ruling by a commission of inquiry that was set up to look into taxes of legal practitioners, said businessmen, etc., and found that Mr. Darbo was liable for a tax, and he must pay 1,900,000 and something thousand, almost 2 million. Mr. Darbo had gone to court to challenge that the commission's mandate was set up. It wasn't out of good faith. It was targeting people that maybe the president or the government was not agree with. What do we learn from that? What if you are familiar with it, can you help us? Does it mean that Mr. Darbo deliberately avoided to pay tax, or now he must pay tax, or could that even affect his political ambition, or etc.? What is the lesson about that, if you are familiar with that too?
Well, on that particular one, I've not read the judgment.
Okay.
And I'm not familiar with the facts, so I would pass that one.
Abdoulie, are you familiar with that?
Not at all. I am not. I just saw it on social media that this is, the Supreme Court in the judgment or ruling dismissed his appeal and agreed with the lower court. So I am not in a position to actually elaborate any further. However, whether this now disbars Mr. Darbo, I do not think so, because the commission that was set up is a civil mechanism and not criminal. And therefore this commission of inquiry are civil. They're almost fact-finding.
Yeah.
So they simply simply make recommendations upon which the Attorney General, the executive, acts upon.
Yeah.
So if you look at the case of Paps Chayas in Seka,
yeah.
and he actually challenged what the commission subsequently emerged from the commission.
The same commission?
Not this, but
a previous case.
Previous one, but it's in relation to commission of inquiry findings.
Okay.
But I would assume if the commission of inquiry had recommended criminal prosecution for what they believe to be a deliberate failure to pay tax, and Mr. Darbo was prosecuted and convicted, so perhaps that's a different.
Okay,
but
that's a different
within the realms of this, I do not believe that Mr. politically, because he has to advise himself whether he believes being a leader of a party and been asked that but I'm guessing Mr. Darbo will say that but for him personally, he was politically motivated. So I don't think he would.
Well, his people said, in the first place, the commission itself, the objective was not in good faith. It was targeting people who normally don't agree with the president or are critical of the president. And also, perhaps the GRA, according to the argument, legal argument put from Darbo, the GRA is perhaps more competent and authority to assess his taxes and not the commission of inquiry. Now, this means, of course, what the Supreme Court said they have done now is that they have agreed with the commission, and they agree that they have the powers to assess him, and therefore Mr. Darbo should pay these taxes. It didn't say he was convicted of tax evasion, but I'm trying to find out now, tax evasion, is it itself a crime?
It can be a crime.
It can be a crime. Tax evasion. How? If you deliberately refuse to pay tax. Or how can it be tax?
It would all depend on the facts and circumstances.
Okay.
In over jurisdictions, like here, I'm guessing there are statutes prescribing how one may be prosecuted.
Okay.
For actions emanating from one's failure,
okay,
if they believe there is a criminal intention.
But the commission didn't say that in this case.
But again, you can look at the US and Britain, where you have big corporations,
okay,
paying tax that is disproportionate to what they actually earn, or some finding other means of avoiding tax and are not subject to criminal accountability. For the context of Gambia in relation to Mr. Darbo, I don't know anything about the case, but it looks like everything that is coming out is in relation to the findings of the Commission of Inquiry. And therefore, findings of Commission inquiries are civil in nature and not criminal.
And it didn't say it should be prosecuted.
And I'm not sure whether the commissioner actually made a recommendation in relation to whether he should be prosecuted, or because they may have made other recommendations, and the white paper subsequently adopted by the Attorney General may have also recommended certain stuff that Mr. Darbo be banned from holding. So the fact that he's still actively involved in politics, I do not think any such recommendation may have been. But I think it would be simply be that let him pay what he owes the state.
But in any case, very bad publicity for him anyway.
Exactly. The timing was really convenient. It came at a time when...
You mean his political opponents will make a meal out of it and say, well, here is this man who wants to become president, and morally he's well, and the commission said, the Supreme Court also said they observed that he pays tax in arrears up to date when election time were coming. that will be music to his political opponents, not so.
I mean, what came out recently about Darbo is embedded in politics? I know a lot of us are under pressure to comment on it, but it's hard to comment on something you do not understand.
Yeah, that's why we're asking legal.
Particularly, I haven't heard anything about Darbo and tax until I saw this on social media.
Okay.
And I asked myself, where is this coming from?
Well, it was a commission in 2001. There were a lot of lawyers were either forced or allegedly forced to pay tax. You know what happened to that money of the tax? According to the Commission of Inquiry, that tax money had gone to... Well, we'll come to that.
Again, I don't think we should labor too much, because Mr. Darbo was one of several lawyers.
A lot of lawyers.
That the commission said. And again, for legal practitioners...
Mr. Darbo challenged where the others didn't challenge. He challenged his case.
If you look at the history of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal, if you look at our law reports and the number of cases from the 1980s right through to now, that Mr. Darbo, I don't think there's any lawyer in this country who has taken matters to the Supreme Court challenging and this sort of, probably more than, because if you look at the law reports, you'll find numerous cases, constitutional matters, and over national issues where Mr. Darbo had actually challenged. So this is
this is just one of the cases he
will
always challenge.
Mr. Darbo, and I think he's a fine lawyer, and I think if he believes that he has a cause and a ground to challenge, then that's what we finish.
He always challenge everything.
But I think we shouldn't labor too much on this, because that's just it's just a minute thing in this really monumental decision by the Supreme Court in respect of the decision reached in favor of Yakumba.
Well, a lot of people believe that the Yakumba case are overshadowed by Darbo, but on another day, this would have been a big story that would really keep going on. But anyway, it's good we know that this was a civil matter, and the commission we didn't know have recommended any recommendation that it should be prosecuted. So Darbo will have to pay this fine, unless, because I think he has exhausted now. The Supreme Court is the last resort, so Darbo will have to pay this fine, isn't it? All right, now we move on to, well, we do not expect, of course, to talk about the substantive legal matters that is surrounding the 3 years journey, but we understand you gentlemen are in the defense team. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Darbo is, but I wish to make myself available next week.
Oh, you make yourself available. So we wouldn't discuss the merits or whatever substance in the court. But how was the condition of your clients, their detention conditions, after you talked to them? What did they say? The conditions they have been kept?
Well, you know, detention conditions in the Gambia are uniform, and they were not subjected to any torture or anything like that. So, but if you are detained at any of the detention facilities, you know that the state does not pay much attention to the conditions of detention in the country. They are generally bad. So if you have any problems, it would have been the same as other people. Not that it is particularly targeted at the 3 years Jatna people.
The human rights people visited them, and they themselves said, okay, no detention center is really comfortable, but many believe it's different from the past.
Well,
when you saw them, when you met them, what did they say when you met them? When you met them last time? When you met them?
Well, when we met them, I met some at Willingara police station. I went to the anti-crime, but I couldn't see them.
Okay.
Yes, I couldn't see anybody. I was told access was limited until they were ready with what they were doing. So I don't know the conditions there. But Willingara is a little better than Burkama, where I don't believe anyone was detained at Burkama, but the Burkama police station detention center is quite bad. Yes. Willingara, I didn't smell any urine or anything like that. They actually have a toilet there. So I think there is a difference. But really, the detention conditions are the same generally throughout the country.
I know we restricted to talk a lot about these 3 years journey, since you people are obviously going to deal with that. But when can you expect to put in bail for them? Actually, we can discuss that. Are you intending to apply the bail for them?
Well, bail was applied for them at Cardiff Magistrates Court, but the magistrate said she had no jurisdiction to hear the matter, so the matter was transferred to the High Court, and the accused persons were remanded. So the matter is coming up on Wednesday at 12 o'clock at the High Court.
Wednesday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Oh, we had
Tuesday, 12 o'clock.
Abdoulie, you make yourself available. So why?
Because I think that the issues that we are confronted with are public matters. These are really important national issues, and all of us should be concerned and affected because we are at a crossroads. Just 3 years ago, we were in a really brutal dictatorship. I don't think we fully transitioned. I think we are still in the process of transitioning into a democracy. And therefore, all of us have this legal and a political duty to ensure that we do not backslide into what used to be the norm in the past. But again, I agree with you during your introduction. This should have been managed better. This has turned out to be a disaster for the government, I believe, because all of this what you see in the international press, because Gambia was a really good example. Because we had a brutal dictator for 22 years. And unlike most of the African countries where they remove through violence, where the country is exposed to a certain level of civil unrest, ours wasn't the case. The elections were relatively free and fair, and Jammeh was kicked out. And he accepted the results before he later tried to reverse. So Gambia became a really successful story, and I think the West in general, when they look at some of these episodes in the African context, they see Gambia as being really progressive in terms of how we emerge from a dictatorship. Just over a week ago, the government of the Gambia has filed a case at the International Court of Justice at The Hague, alleging that the state of Myanmar is committing acts of genocide and over really brutal human rights violations. Our Attorney General and the Gambia government as a whole have really received strong, prominent applause. A few days after that, when the international
people were still
prominence given to Gambia's case at ICJ, a few days after that, because that was on, I think, on Thursday the 23rd, just 4 or 5 days later, then from what they perceive to be the same state and its security machinery
about human
unleashing
rights,
disproportionate brutality on its civilians. Okay, so. And this is something that I've when I spoke to 1 or 2 higher-ranking government officials, I said, you've got to be really careful here, because most of the money that we require for our developmental projects are stuff that we get from our partners in Europe and America, generally in the West, and the Bretton Woods Institute, the World Bank, IMF, and the African Development Bank. When they see images of what we saw on the screens, I do not think their assistance will be forthcoming. And we just, the negativity that emerges from all of it, I think is really bad for our democracy. So, and I agree with you entirely. I think right from the onset, this could have been managed better. Again, unless I am wrong, I think the APRC supporters, despite the revelations at the TRRC, are saying that Jammeh should come back. And probably should come back to enter our political space. And they were granted a permit to exercise their rights. I think it was the same day or a day later when the 3 years Jotna were denied a permit. So the contradictions couldn't be more stark.
Puzzling,
you know, so that's one of the things. But one of the key issues here, I've seen a lot of people who are criticizing the 3 years Jotna, and whether you ideologically whether you agree with them or not. But I think when Gambians went to vote in December 2016, they didn't vote based on any legal agreement by the parties at the time. They voted because they wanted political change. And one of the reasons why probably Barrow was endorsed by the people overwhelmingly. People couldn't care less about whether the individual who was contesting, but people simply wanted change. And I think we all assumed at the time that the reason why the coalition was simply to remove Jammeh, go back to the drawing board, come back again and organize elections. So we should never even have been in this situation. I don't understand why African leaders, once they start enjoying the fruits of the presidency, the trappings of power, then it becomes almost toxic.
Impossible.
Barrow should have done the honorable thing to say, you know, what I'm about to do is quite noble. This is quite exceptional in the context of Africa. I told, when the Gambians went to vote 3 years ago, they voted, I at the back of their minds that they were voting because the narrative at the time was that there'll be elections in 3 years. So I think the honourable thing would have been for Mr. Barrow to vacate and just say, after the 3 years, I will vacate. I will not be involved in this matter any further.
Or perhaps 3 years might be too short.
Or too short. But go back to the people.
But now I can go to 5 years.
Go back to the people. But it looks like, I think what aggravates this matter even further is because the way that probably Barrow has dealt with this issue, it's almost saying to the Gambian people, I don't care what you think. I am the president, and I'm going to exercise my right. I'm going to remain here, whether you like it or not. Tough.
So like you said, he agreed with us that this whole thing should have been handled much earlier, before it grew to a monster like what we have today. And there's no doubt what I said. I said in my observations that I think the 3 years judgment's objective was misread by the government. I mean, they should have realized that these people don't have weapons. They don't even have the wherewithal to overthrow a government. Of course, some of their rhetorics are concerned, like we're going to go State House, grab Mr. Barrow and take it. Even though it's not practically possible, but their rhetorics were transmitted to mean, or translated to mean, that these people really pose a danger. I mean, the danger they pose is what the government failed to realize, and that is they want to discredit the government. And you shouldn't help them do that. Just give them a permit, they shout for a day, they go home. But if this kind of confrontation, like lawyers have been saying, the images have gone around the world, people were seen beaten by the police. I mean, a country that everybody is watching for that big popular case that we won against Myanmar. I mean, just a few days later, we see pictures coming from the Gambia, which really discrediting the government.
Water cannons.
Yeah, that's
trucks on our streets.
In our streets, fire, tires, boring. And when you ask, you know, like I've always told the people, when you ask, what they tell you, I mean, they just bring you a video of Mr. Barrow saying, I'm going for 3 years. And they bring you another video, I'm now going for 5 years. Nobody can stop me. And then they say, okay, this is the reason these people are in the street. They don't know the bigger picture or all the arguments that people are trying to bring. People outside don't know that. So they shouldn't have allowed these people even to come to this stage. They should have handled them since at the beginning. They should have read that these people are out to discredit us. And today, the government is coming under criticism from human rights bodies, amnesty, press freedom, all kind of things, that publicity they don't deserve.
And rightfully so. I mean, if I must add anything, I think the primary aim of PSW now, all of us who support them, is this. We have witnessed 22 years where one person built power at the expense of everybody else. And now when we change the regime, we are reclaiming our power. If Barrow comes back to say, I promise you this, but I'm going to do whatever I want, whether you agree with me or not, what he's doing is taking that power away from us. And that is what makes this whole thing really sad, and it's awful. Because many people have lived their lives for this moment, for this time that we have. Now to have one person, just because he can and he wants you to say, I'm taking back your power again, throw us back into the 23 years, it's what many people do not want. And I think that was the aim of the previous Vietnam as well. If Barrow should recognize that power belongs to the people and come back to reseek to extend his mandate to 5 years,
Exactly. We wouldn't have any problem.
What he needs to do is recognize that it is not for him to decide for himself.
Exactly. In fact, that's what he had said at the beginning. I have tapes everywhere where he was saying, no, it's for the people to decide. There have been records of that. So how Mr. Barrow can change now to be very, very argumentative and to say that now I'll go whether anybody like it. I think played a part to all these problems and the lack of handling the matter much sooner, much earlier than now, all contributed. And certainly Mr. Barrow, I mean, for all intent and purpose, doesn't deserve this negative publicity that we are seeing now. People been beaten by the police, tear gas been thrown, tires been burned, press houses been closed. I mean, this is the mistake Jammeh made. That's why Jammeh is a pariah today. Nobody want to deal with him because in the first place he made journalists his enemies. And I think Mr. Barrow should have, men who are wise enough to avoid him getting this kind of unnecessary reputation. This is not going to help his image. I think they should look at this problem.
But say, for example, as members of the journalistic community,
Yeah.
have you done any survey to check which percentages of the country are asking for him to step down, and what percentage is asking him for him to go to a full 5-year term?
Well, it's difficult because there was a survey about this barometer or whatever that did not talk about that, but basically dealt with how long people want the economic to stay and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's difficult because it depends on who you talk to. I mean, or whose post you read. I mean, if somebody is pro-Barrow, they would say, well, no, 3 years nonsense, it is 5 years is constitution, and I mean, that's the excuse they will use. If you talk to somebody who is anti-Barrow, he will say, look, the guy doesn't deserve to go 1 day after 3 years. So it depends on who you ask. And no, I have not known of a survey that came out with an official verdict to say this certain percentage of people said he goes or not. They are expensive and they're difficult and things are so polarized. And you know, you could say both sides are competing, you know, for visibility. If you look at the 3 years just in the crowd, you go to, I mean, the Gambia for 5 years want to outmatch that crowd. So you see, the thing is, everybody want to confuse the people as to where the majority of voices are saying this or that. But you see, what is quite important is that even if Mr. Barrow was to go for 5 years, if it had been handled in a manner that is really not going to lead us to this kind of division by now, it would have been over. Because, I mean, the problem is many people will say it's a matter between him and UDP. I mean, to be fair, UDP was never interested in 3 years. If Mr. Darbo's pronouncement was anything to go by, the lawyer Darbo, I mean, the problem with Barrow and the UDP is 5 years, not 3. Why I said it, if Barrow had no intention to go beyond 5, he would not quarrel with UDP. Certainly, that was their position. Not so. So, according to observers, if Mr. Barrow had dealt with this matter and said, kindly allow us to complete all these reform and objectives we set, it cannot fit in 3, but it can fit in 5 years, and stop there. Apparently his ambition now with the forming of a political party, everybody is now, the man is thinking of 10 years, 15 years, and that many people found quite unacceptable. I think that was what created all this tension. Not so. Well, yes, unless you want to embellish the points our landed friends raised, we want to wrap up. They have a big legal battle to fight. Mr. Darbo, Mr. Fatou has just announced he's made himself available to join lawyers, which are more than half a dozen now. Not so, Lawyer Darbo.
Well, about that, yes.
About that.
I just have one question with regards to, I don't know if it's something that you can answer. The charges that are brought against your client, are they bailable?
One of them is not bailable. Yes, because it's Section 76, rioters destroying buildings, structures, and things like that. That is why the matter is at the High Court. Yes, right. On the face of it, but we've made legal arguments at the Magistrates Court that because it is not a capital crime, as that terminology is understood, yes, they are bailable. So we'll make that pitch again to a judge of the High Court, and the Ladies Honorable Mrs. Justice Amina Sahar on Tuesday.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens.
We'll see, yeah. Well, of course, we are restricted by law to deal with more matters, but we have learned a lot. I must thank you, our honorable landed friends, as they themselves will call themselves, Abdoulie, Fatou, and Lamin J. Darbo. Thank you very much for your insights in today's brunch, and of course, Nima Kamara of Kerr Fatou and of the University of the Gambia. Thank you all, and that's all about it in the brunch this week. Until we come back here again, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that is agua, bell agua. We shouldn't forget them. They quench our thirst.
You know, so University of College because